Hi there. In this lecture we see Wilhelm Steinitz against Emanuel Lasker in 1899, round 27. So Steinitz plays e4, we have e5, we have knight c3, knight f6, and now the Vienna gambit f4. This is a very exciting gambit. I have used it far too much myself in online fast time controls, usually with overall success. It is a lot of fun. We have d5. Objectively, this is like one of the very best ideas Black has, and it does help Black get at least equality in an objective scientific sense. We see d3. This is a slightly passive move already from Steinitz, giving Black an easier game than usual. F takes e5 is a more critical test with knight f3. And for example, bishop e7, queen e2, knight takes. This position has been seen a bit. I mean, there are different ways of playing it as well. If d3, it's usually a little bit controversial for Black to play queen h4 check. And often players do play that. It's kind of, there's some very interesting lines for White. But the simplest line is knight takes c3 and then d4. And Black should be slightly better, in fact, overall. In practice, White still has a lot of attacking potential, which is one of the reasons I kind of like it as a weapon for fast chess online. But anyway, here we see a very passive treatment after d5. This d3, very passive indeed. We see knight c6. It seems even more critical as e takes f4 here. So, for example, e5, d4, and Black's doing really well here after knight d5. This position with the check is super annoying. If bishop d2, we can see knight e3 is a bit vicious. If king f2, yeah, Black's definitely doing very well. So that's why e takes f4 seems a critical test. With d3, White has weakened some dark squares, extra dark squares around the camp, which makes this position slightly dicey for White. And if e takes this position, Black's got a lead in a way in development and can safely gambit this pawn to accentuate further development potential. And Black is doing really well. Black's got great compensation here in terms of piece activity and overall has the advantage. If bishop takes f4, bishop b4 is just really annoying. This is a really annoying position for White. For example, this, it seems as though White really hasn't done much out of the opening. So anyway, knight c6 though is a bit of a let-off compared to e takes f4, it seems. F takes e5, knight takes e5. d4, the knight goes to g6. We have e takes d5. If e5, it seems Black can play knight e4, and this position should be about equal. Check might be useful to put a pawn on c6, and it's about even. So e5 is playable, it's about even. We see e takes d5 though. Instead, knight takes d5, knight takes d5. Here, you might think, well, it's activating the queen. Why did White do that? The thing is, if knight f3, there's bishop b4. This is pretty annoying. Black could double White's pawns and get a very comfortable position here with a small edge. So knight takes d5 is played. We see queen takes d5, knight f3, bishop g4, bishop e2, and now Black has the luxury of castling queenside in this position. So it's a very pleasant position indeed. c3, bishop d6, pointing at soft spots in advance against White's king on White castling. So this glare on h2 is unpleasant. And the rooks are comfortably placed in the center here, ready for action. h3, bishop d7, knight g5, and now this is kind of repelled back. Any threat this was making, there's a threat of mate now in response. And the knight just goes back. It seems like a wasted move. The thing is, if bishop f3, because this is unpleasant, if rook f2, there's things like bishop g3 even. If the rook moves, we're going to mate. So actually, it kind of forces the knight to go back. But on bishop f3, let's look at this. Losing the knight and square bishop here is just very unpleasant. This position is just so nice for Black with the bishop pair and the light square bishop without a counterpart and a rook left like this, it's just so nice for black. Black's getting a clear advantage. So the knight goes back, and here, this actually becomes one of the brilliancy prizes. This takes the brilliancy prize of the whole tournament, and this is like one of Lasker's most amazing early tournaments. So what do you think black plays here for 1,000 points? If you might want to pause the video. Black's playing this position. Black's got a dreamy position out of the opening, with the bishops nicely central, looking at both sides of the board. Beautiful position. It's kind of in a way off-putting for any Vienna game player. You don't play it with d3 basically nowadays. You don't get this position. Black's doing fantastically well here, but emphasizes white's king safety issues now with this piece sack. Knight takes g2, a bit of a Tau-like, Mikhail Tau-like move. So we see king takes, and the Tau effect carries on here with bishop takes h3 check. So double piece sack brilliancy here. It's a strong position in any case, as you might suspect. The rook left is dangerous, rook e6 for rook f6. For example, this position, how does white actually defend? It's a very difficult position indeed for white here. If rook h1, okay, protecting h3, we have this very nasty pin, and the power of the pin piece is illusionary, which means g5 is not, this is on the cards. Other things are on the cards as well. But as one example, because it's kind of tricky to defend this, bishop e2, we could consider this and then snapping off e2. I mean, it's a horrendous position. But let's say, the rook goes back here, g5, if nothing else. Black's hugely well here. Everything's pointing at the king. It's a dream position on an opposite side castling scenario. So bishop takes h3, though, is played, which is absolute brilliancy, of course. We see king f2. If king takes h3, queen f5 check, queen g4 check. If king h1, then queen h3 check, and rook e4. This rook lift is vicious. For example, like this, with rook g4, and white is overpowered. White's going to have to give up material here. This cuts across escape squares and means that the killer check is coming in for a mate. It's just too much to bear. That was on king h1, and if king f2, queen g3 is mate, much simpler. So king f2 here was played instead of taking the bishop. And now again, the idea of f6 and g5 is very strong. In fact, this could be played in the g5 move order. The queen is looking at g2 if the knight takes. But, for example, queen g1 check and queen takes f1, winning material immediately through that nasty pin. And if bishop takes g5, then we've got another road near the king here. f6 is quite crushing. For example, this. We've opened that road, and for example, taking and using the road quicker than white is pretty devastating. It could end up like this. Pretty nasty stuff. So f6 though is great as well. Rook g1, g5. Even though white has this extra knight, these pawns are ready to be pushed, and there's no king behind them. So this is a great, battleground where your king's safe, and you're able to weaken white's king safety here. We have a counter piece sacrifice. The damage is done though. White's king safety is far less than black's. We have queen e6, so the rook was hitting the queen. The queen now threatens things like queen e3. We have queen d3 covering e3, but now bishop f4 hitting the rook and reigniting e3 use potentially. We have an exchange given up rather desperately. It's a horrible situation indeed. So this is tried, but it's horrible. Okay, bishop takes g5, knight takes, queen f6 check, bishop f3. And now bishop f5 was played. As you might expect, queen takes g5 is also possible with a pleasant enough position for black. But bishop f5, knight takes h7, we have queen g6. So hitting the queen, and this knight seems pretty stranded here on h7. This hits b7. Okay, that's parryable with c6 with tempo. Queen a5, and now just hitting the h7 knight, not minding about a7. We have rook h5. If queen takes a7, just to put this on the board, rook takes, check, king c7. This position, there's just king d7 to get out of the checks. End of story. So rook h5 is tried, hitting f5. But now bishop g4. And this does make way for queen c2 check. We see that. Rook g5, queen c2 check. And now taking out f3, and look, the knight's hanging. End of game. If white tries, I mean, it's end of game. If white played on, then we just a rook up. And we're skewering rook and bishop up. Yeah, it's vicious. And if king takes, then check, 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 and mate. So quite a vicious game indeed. Brilliancy prize of the tournament. So from a fantastic position at the opening, opposite side castling, this d3, you know, black had a dream position, the way it was played. e5 might have been a better bet in retrospect, trying to keep things more closed. When black, you know, castling queenside and has the bishops in the centre like that, it's a really beautiful position indeed. And this just repulsed the knight, you know, back basically because of resources like bishop g3, if rook f2. So that was a regretful decision. Yeah, it's a fantastic position, just right for this immediate piece sacrifice. Absolutely amazing stuff, inspirational. I hope you enjoyed this as much as me, this game. True brilliancy. Thanks so much.